Is age just a number? Well, why don't we talk about it? Hi, I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick, and today I'm going to discuss one of the internet's favorite topics. Or maybe it's just one of my favorite topics. I don't know. Either way, I'm going to talk about it. It's my show. I'm allowed to do that. So, we're talking about age in dating. Sorry, I'm a coffee addict. I require it. It feeds me. It moves me. I'm like a male Lorelai Gilmore. That's a reference to an early 2000s show that probably none of you watch that also had elements of dating in it. But we're not talking about Gilmore Girls today. Maybe another time. Is age just a number? And what do I mean? Well, what I mean to say is that, and again, if you've watched this show before, you know where I'm coming from. I'm a guy. I talk to guys. That's where my advice is generally geared. My advice is also generally geared towards kind of Christian guys, but also trying to apply Christian thought to secular thought as well. It's a whole thing. I got like 300 episodes. Go back and watch those. Anyway, there is a theory that floats around the internet talking about the importance of dating young. And ladies and gentlemen, I mean a very specific subset of young. I mean, the theory floats around what I call the red pill internet, the world of the whatever podcasts and the Myron and his sidekick, whoever that guy is, who say that men should focus on dating women only 18 to 25. This is carried out by such luminaries in the real world as Bill Belichick and Leonardo DiCaprio, who we all know to be the philosophers of our generation. Bill Belichick is a football philosopher, but maybe not what I would call the best example of who I would want my sons to be like or my daughters to date. The reason for this specific age bracket, the reason men in these podcasts focus so much on this age bracket is, and I'm trying to say this in the most polite fashion possible, it's to focus on there's no real way to dance around it. It's to focus on the virtue of the young woman. Well, that's actually too polite. The virginity of the young woman. In many of these podcast circles, women get described as what we might call virgin sacrifices to be given to a higher power, the higher power in this case being a man. This ignores every principle the Bible has ever espoused, but we move on. But 18 to 25, it pops up, and it creeps out of the red pill sphere into kind of the pseudoscience sphere. Men, if you want big families, you should date women 18 to 25 because they're the only ones who will be fertile and who will have seed and bring you many children to continue your line. It creeps into the pseudoscientific realm, not because they try to couch it in terms of women over the age of 30 are what are known as geriatric pregnancies in, not 30, I think it's maybe 35 or 37, something like that, are what are coined as geriatric pregnancies in the medical field. My guess is that term has been updated since I've done the research on it, but it's called a geriatric pregnancy because it comes with more inherent risk. It's more likely the kid, or statistically more likely that the kid may have genetic abnormalities. You may not actually have a successful pregnancy, stuff like that. And what's sort of odd about it is that, number one, it ignores the fact that most couples don't have their first kids nowadays anyways until they're in their 30s. But it also ignores the fact that there's a lot more to a relationship than just looking for a potential, like, breeding partner. Men, we are not foxes, or pick your favorite animal. I got on foxes. I'm on a fox kick right now. I don't know why. There's lots of cute animals. There's lots of cute fox videos on Instagram. My phone is listening to me, and I said foxes are cute one day, and all of a sudden I was bombarded by foxes. They're always listening, and they know what you want to watch, and they were correct. I absolutely wanted to watch videos of cute foxes. They're adorable, and they make silly noises. They squeal. It's frankly, go look up videos of foxes to give yourself a dopamine kick. It's an adorable way to get some good dopamine. Anyways, my point being, you're more than a base instinct. I think having kids is a good thing, and I think having kids is something that I definitely want to do. Is it the only thing I look for when I look at somebody who I want to date? The answer is no, and it can't be, because, well, how could it be? We're not, it's as much as Eminem may have demanded it in the early 2000s, you and me, baby, we're more than animals, or we're more than mammals, however that lyric goes. The truth is, when you're looking for someone to date, someone to marry, you're looking for someone who you can build a life with, and that's not just based on the child-rearing factor, assuming that 18 to 25 is the only range that women can successfully have children, which we already have said is bunk. Then I saw something today that made me want to give pause and want to give this podcast to push back a little bit. It was that men, statistically and in general on the whole, will prefer younger women. We do see that bear out. We do see that bear out, especially on dating apps. When the research gets pulled from dating apps, we typically see men ages 25 to 35 looking at women under the age of 30. Or rather, I should say, yeah. So it's really like, as men get older, their preferences stay about, on dating apps at least, their preferences stay about 10 years younger than they are, their max preference. I don't know, on a dating app, it's a whole different world. I've done podcasts on dating apps, how they're mostly scams. I also just recently did a podcast on how the dating app worked for me, for the moment. So, not everything is a scam, but on the whole, men seem to prefer younger women on dating apps when given the chance to, quote unquote, optimally select. But in real life, when you actually talk to human beings, and you're not just on the internet, what you find is very different. Men don't just select based on this quasi-scientific theory that, 18 to 25-year-olds are magically somehow the best women on the planet. No. Ladies, I'm also going to, as we get to the end of the podcast here, I'm also going to push back a little bit, though. Let's not berate the men of our lives and say that the men want younger women so that they can dominate them. That's not fair to the men. Men are not perfect. No one is. Ladies, you're not perfect either. But let's not assume the worst of men. We can assume the worst of certain people, but let's not assume the worst of all men. Men may prefer younger women if men are chronically on the internet. And it may be that men don't necessarily want a woman they can dominate so much as the media that they have been fed throughout their entire lives tells them that what they want is a younger woman, when in reality that's not true. Most of the women in movies, quote unquote, look young, for whatever that term means, but in the reality they're into their 30s, their 40s. In these major motion pictures, the babes in these movies, they're not 20 mostly, unless you watched Euphoria and then you were buying into the fantasy of highly sexualized high schoolers. That's weird. Don't do that, man. Unless you are in high school, you are on a slippery slope when you watch shows that hypersexualize the stories of high schoolers. Now, I could do the rest of the podcast on that. Unfortunately, I don't have the rest of the podcast. I have reached my time limit. I must say goodbye to you. The show is called 10 Minutes with Nick, not 35 Minutes with Nick. And so, I will simply sum up by saying this. Men, don't listen to the internet when the internet says to you, you must seek a woman ages 18 to 25. It's frankly not true. It is bunk. It is pseudoscience. You are better than that. Find a woman who excites you, who attracts you, and then continue to date that woman and figure out, okay, can I continue to make the choice to remember the things that excite me, to remember the things that attract me? And maybe that'll help you, or maybe it won't. And maybe we'll all just be alone and miserable for the rest of our lives. For the moment, I'm not alone and miserable, so I'm having a great time. And you know what? We'll just keep it at that. Men, make smart choices. Women, have patience with your men. I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. Have a great day.